If you've turned on the news lately, for sure you've seen the headlines about the National Association of Realtors, or NAR, settlement. Now, don't believe the settlement myths. Unfortunately, the press has given consumers the incorrect impression that the settlement is going to require brokerages to slash their commissions. But nothing in the settlement has any kind of limitation on what brokerages may charge or the services that they may offer. And this has always been negotiable. There was never any kind of collective bargaining. And in different markets, there's different types of services and competence that's available. So every state has different forms and different standards of practice. And since I'm in Georgia, I'm going to speak directly to Georgia. So what are the new rules to come out of the settlement? The first one is that there's a new rule about written agreements. And the settlement is going to require, before you get in the car with an agent, you need to have signed a buyer brokerage agreement specifying what services and value are going to be offered and what is the cost of those services for the buyer brokerage, doing their job. So in Georgia, we've always required this. So this isn't going to change anything for my practice or my colleagues here in Georgia. The second rule is about offers of compensation to agents on a multiple listing service, or an MLS. The MLS is where we advertise our listings. So how buyer agent commissions are communicated is what is going to change, not the myth that sellers will no longer pay buyer agents. Now, let me clear something up. There has never been an obligation for a seller to pay a buyer agent compensation. It's a practice that's always worked, and it's worked really well. The one thing that has been required is that in the MLS, there has always been a field that needed to be filled out saying how much a seller was willing to pay a buyer broker. And it could have been $1, but it needed to be filled in. So the settlement is requiring that field to go away. So you can no longer display how much a seller is willing to pay a buyer broker. Now, since commissions are no longer featured on the MLS, it's going to leave agents in the dark a bit. And practically speaking, we're going to have to pick up the phone, call the listing agent to see how much they're going to pay the buyer broker, if anything. Now, the type of compensation that's available for these buyer brokers, it can take multiple forms. It just depends on how the broker, negotiates with the actual buyer. It can be a fixed fee that's a commission paid directly by the buyer. It can be a concession that's paid by the seller, which would come in the form of a special stipulation that's written in the offer from the buyer, asking the seller to pay the buyer broker commission, or it can be a portion of the listing broker's compensation. This is the biggest impact on Georgia, having more conversations about commission rather than it being directly listed in the MLS. So the big question is, do we think sellers are going to stop offering to pay buyer brokers? My opinion, no. Sellers recognize that buyer brokers are the ones that bring the buyers. The more buyers you have, the higher the price of your home that you sell it for. And then the other rumor about home prices coming down is false as well. I mean, home prices are determined by supply and demand. We continue across the country to have extremely low inventory, and there's just a lack of supply. So this is not going to have a significant impact on home prices. So as of the date of this recording, the NAR settlement has not been approved by the courts, but we do expect it to be approved and effective by midsummer of 2024. And in every industry, there's a paradigm shift. And good realtors are going to continue to adapt in their business practices and their communications with their clients and continue to move on successfully in helping people navigate the home buying and selling process. If you have any questions about this, please feel free to reach out to me, and happy to discuss it in more detail. And thank you for your listening.